Hello, my name is Jason Walters, and I am the creator of the game Argumentation. And I wanted to take a few minutes in this longer format video and tell you a bit about the process that went into creating Argumentation. So for the last year, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about how history works, and more importantly, how people perceive history works and how their perceptions of how history works affects their lives. And when I say people, I've come to understand everyone. Everyone, consciously or subconsciously, has assumptions about how history functions. And this kind of infuses and impregnates everything in our lives. How we act, what our politics are, what our economic and social beliefs are. It's actually a key fundamental part of being a person, and it's very rarely talked about. So I've been talking to people at game conventions, playtesting the game with my friends, playtesting it at conventions. I went to Burning Man and talked to people about it. Done a lot of reading, a lot of podcast listening, a lot of listening to YouTube streams, and I've gone to a lot of places that, let's just say, I took a hit for the team that you don't want to go. And I've heard a lot of opinions about how history functions from a lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives. And in my previous game, Symposium, I wanted to use the storytelling format because I'm a distributor, retailer, publisher, and author of role-playing and storytelling games to explore some of life's great questions from the perspective of life's great philosophies. This time around, I want to explore history's great questions from the perspective of many of history's framings of how history functions. And, or rather, I don't want to do it. I want you to do it. And I want your friends to do it. And I want you to do it in a way that lets you look at a wide variety of different ways of understanding history. This is very, I think, integral to our lives. I think it's important as a matter of self-awareness to our lives. And as an example, as I'm recording this, we are several days out from the conclusion of the American presidential elections. And you can see how understandings of history have suffused this election cycle. On one hand, you have a group who have a very cyclical understanding of history, right? Make America great again, which implies you're going, that there's a eternal return, that you can go back to a thing that was that is not now. So that's a cyclical understanding of history, which originally came from Islamic thinkers, actually. And you also have that infused with Thomas Carlyle's great man theory of history, right? Only this one man can make us return to greatness, right? These are you have to have this man, and this man will make the historical thing happen. These are, again, ways of looking at history. And on the other side, you have kind of a Whig historiography in the form of progressivism. The past was not as good as the present. The present must be better. The present will not be as good as the future. That there is a direction to history, and that direction is progress. And we have to make sure history goes in a certain way because the past was bad and we don't want to go back there. And this is infused with a sort of Marxist historical materialism, in that there's a kind of a concept of leveling up in history from that side of the political spectrum. Like you were here and then you leveled up to here and now you're leveling up to here. I'm, of course, doing gross injustice to historical materialism, but you get the idea. And if you take these two forces in conflict, right, you get yet another view of a historical process, which is Hegel's historical romanticism, that yes, you are seeing thesis and counter-thesis, and then counter-thesis to the counter-thesis, and that as these understandings of history grind against one another in a perpetual process, you actually get a forward momentum as they achieve equilibrium and they achieve understandings and they achieve a new consensus, which is then in the future challenged by yet another counter thesis, right? And so that's Hegel. So my idea with argumentation was to help people go through the deep process of looking at all of these models of history for themselves so they can make their own decisions about what's true or not true, or what's valid and not valid. And there are a lot of models of how history functions. I've just named 5, but there are many, many, many. There's paradigm shift, the idea that hypocrisies in a culture, its internal contradictions build up, and in the end force a shift in complete consciousness, and you get a new society. I think Heidegger liked that one, if I remember correctly. There's negative conquest theory, which comes from a thinker called Franz Oppenheimer, not to be confused with the scientist, which is that all of history is sort of herder, nomadic cultures conquering settled agricultural cultures and setting themselves up as an aristocracy, and that's what history is this cycle of aristocracies imposing themselves, useless aristocracies in his view, imposing themselves upon the productive. There's the theory of history that everything really is conspiracy, that its shadowy forces behind the scenes are really what makes history function. And then there's the theory that what makes history function is people that believe there are shadowy forces that are conducting conspiracies behind the stage of history. And there's some pretty good examples of historical figures that believed that and changed history. So there's really a lot of models. And for this game, in my previous game, Symposium, I wanted the storytelling framing of you being at Plato's Symposium, right? That you're at a dinner party in the ancient Greek world, and you sort of start out with that. In this game, an argumentation is actually a group of historians, like a convention of historians would be an argumentation. And you're a bunch of poorly paid instructors at a badly funded liberal arts college, having a coffee together, in a bad coffee in a faculty lounge, and it's a series of, it starts out with a series of questions, and that guides you through the ability to select each round, different historical framings you can all use, and then answering various questions from history, some counterfactuals, some deeper than that, to try to get a grasp not so much of the deeper questions of history, but of the deeper question of how we perceive history as functioning. And so the mechanics for argumentation are a combination of sort of original stuff, apples to apples mechanics. There is a winner, which isn't normal in a storytelling game, but it's also, it's fun sometimes. Of apples to apples with some mechanics from, once again, like Symposium from Alex Roberts for the Queen, which is a game I greatly admire. And it plays very well. You don't have to have a great knowledge of history to play, but it helps if you are interested in history. And it helps if you're interested, more importantly than just, the where's, why's, and what's of history, about how it functions and why. And if you're not, I greatly urge you to become interested in that, because I think it's affecting all of our lives everywhere in the world right now. And I think it greatly affects how our leaders perceive their role in the culture, how intellectuals and economists perceive their role, and increasingly how a worldwide public with access to vast amounts of knowledge over the internet perceives the direction of their lives and the directions of their families' lives. So I urge you to pick up Argumentation, support me on this crowdfunding project, support my project. I would like to print a lot of these and to sell them at as low a cost as I can. They're going to be in Tarot-sized format, so they're kind of on the big size. Because there's a lot of information, as you'll see in the free PDF version of it that I'm making publicly available. You see, I'm packing a lot of information on the cards because there's a lot there. I can't even. Boy, did I have to edit, and I'm an editor, and I'll tell you, it's a lot of editing to get a lot of information on these cards. I couldn't tell you half the things I'd love to tell you. About the people involved in conceptualizing these historical processes and the processes themselves, the hypothetical processes. I try to use a little humor in it. There are figures in history I like more than others, and of course that'll probably come through. There's historical framings and understandings that I'm personally more inclined to, and that may come through, or hopefully not, but certainly my probably my sense of humor comes through for good or ill. But I do try to sort of kind of poke fun at every historical figure that's mentioned in the game. Again, this is not the sort of storytelling game that's about me, really, though. When you create, the things you create, your personality comes through. But really, it's about you. Really, the game is about helping people get a better grasp of their understanding of history, and maybe critiquing it if it's something that's subconscious that you haven't chosen, so that you can make choices that are productive for you and your family and your community and your friends when you understand history. That we do more when we think about the historical process than skim the surface, And games are good for that, because if I did my job properly, it should be fun, and should be entertaining and produce camaraderie, fellowship between you and your friends you play games with, as well as hopefully being informative and productive. So and of course that's really every game designer's goal, is to make something that's fun, even if it's kind of about something heavy, or at the very least, if not fun in a traditional sense, enlightening and entertaining, which I think this is all those things. So thank you again for taking the time to watch all the way through this rather long video, so I can give you a long form explanation of what I'm doing. And thank you in advance for your support of this project.